Hello everyone, my name is John and welcome back to my channel. Here on Bitcoin, you can see that we actually broke below this support level. But look, this last daily bar was actually quite bullish as we broke to the downside, but then we had a lot of strong buys coming back in to push the price back up. Coming over to Ethereum, you can see that we had a very similar scenario where we broke below this support level, but look at the last daily bar. We had quite a strong bullish bar as we broke to the downside and a lot of buyers came straight back in. I'm going to explain right now why this happens, so make sure you stay tuned until the end of the video. Let's look at Bitcoin on a shorter term time frame such as the 4 hour so I can explain exactly why we had a major reversal in this area. First to begin, you would remember that we've been in quite a strong trading range. We moved quite strongly to the upside and really strongly to the downside. We've been trading range right between this area. You can see that we've been supporting a lot through this area and we've been using this area as quite a strong resistance level. But in this area here, you can actually see that we began to break to the downside. And if you look at the exponential moving average, you can see that we were actually traveling to the downside, which means there is a high probability chance that we're going to continue to the downside as the exponential average slope is going to show you which way we need to continue trading. But right in this area here, you can see that we had quite a strong push. It was basically a 5% trade, and I'm going to explain to you exactly, if we look at the latest move, you can actually see that we basically made a 5% move to the upside, which is a really strong trade, and I'm going to show you exactly why we did this. And the main reason we did this actually has to do with the MACD indicator, the moving average convergence divergence indicator. It is one of my favorite oscillators, and it actually gives me the exact entry that I need to get into trades, and it actually tells me exactly why I need to get out. So let me explain it right now. Here you can see through this bearish move quite here, we actually had quite a strong move on the MACD indicator through these bearish histogram bars. Once we got this quite strong push and we knew that the exponential moving average was traveling to the downside, as I explained in yesterday's video, we have a high probability of moving to the downside, and that's exactly what we did. But after we made this really strong push to the downside, you can see to actually have a proper divergence, we then need to continue back to the upside. We need to go from red to green and then back to red. And look at what actually happened through here. Once we had this really strong push, we actually made a lower low. So in this area through here, we made a low and we made a really strong histogram low. But look in here, price made a lower low in terms of price, but look at the MACD indicator. It actually made a higher low. So we made a low in price and we made a low on the MACD indicator. Then we made a lower low on price, but you can see that we actually made a higher low on the MACD indicator, signaling a divergence pattern. And the only reason I can trade this divergence pattern is because we need to get a really strong push to the downside. Then we have to come back into this green area here. If we do not come back into this green area here, it is not a classical divergence. The reason being is we need to trap a lot of traders in this area. A lot of people would have thought, oh, we need to get long. But look, using this EMA to the downside and using this MACD indicator signaling right here that we're going to have a really strong move to the downside, you need to understand what to look for. Without this extreme lower low and then coming back into this green area and then continuing to the downside, it is not a classic divergence pattern. And this was my exact entry. So when I'm looking for a divergence pattern, I'm looking for a lower low in price, like we made in here. We went low and then we made a lower low, but then I'm looking for a higher low on the MACD indicator. Let's actually scroll into the MACD indicator so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. Here you can see that we made this big lower low. Then we came back up, we broke the back of the bulls, and then we continued to the downside. So we do have this divergence pattern, and my exact entry was actually right on this bar right here. The reason being is we've actually began stopping going to the downside and we had the first tick up to the upside. That's the exact time that I say yes. We've got the divergence pattern that's actually confirmed for me. So this is saying that we have the divergence pattern that's confirmed for me. And this was the first bar that's actually beginning to pull to the upside. And as you can see, look, that bar right there lines up exactly with this bar, this green bar right there. And that would have been my exact entry point. I wouldn't have been buying down here because we didn't have this divergence pattern. As soon as this bar closed, and we had the divergence pattern with the uptick of the MACD histogram, that signals to me, yes, now is the time to get long. And look at this, would have made an easy trade over 2% to the upside. As I was speaking about in my last video, when we're trading, especially in this trading range pattern, we need to be getting out quick and simple. We need to be scalping. We don't want to be holding long or holding short, as we're still quite in that trading range pattern. But you can see that we had a really strong divergence pattern, and that was signaling to me, yes, on this bar right here, we need to get long. If you'd like me to make an in-depth video on how to use this MACD indicator, then leave a comment on this video. Now looking at the daily time frame for Bitcoin, you can see through here we actually broke this support level. Initially, we were actually supporting, but then after yesterday's action, we had that first breakdown to the downside. But with this breakout to the downside, you would see that it isn't quite so strong. You can see that we had a massive wick to the downside and then continued all the way up. And you can see that we basically closed right in the area that we were supporting from. And it does definitely look like a bit of a kangaroo tail pattern. Reason being is we had a really strong wick to the downside right in this support area, but we weren't actually able to close in this area. What we ideally would have wanted is this bar to be this full bar and then actually close down onto the downside. Then we would have known, yep, we're going at least down to 24,000 as I've been speaking about in the symmetrical triangle. But since we didn't get that, it is definitely signaling to me that the bull market for Bitcoin is not over just yet, and we need to be waiting for another confirmation for this continued push to the upside. But what I am looking at right now is this exponential moving average has began to tick to the downside. You would see that through here, we were moving up, we were moving down. Back through this area up here, we had a really strong push to the upside. But in this area here, we are beginning to tick to the downside. And what could happen is price could come back up, retest this exponential moving average as it's traveling to the downside before we then collapse to the downside down into this $24,000 per Bitcoin level. The reason I'm so interested in this $24,000 per Bitcoin level is because of this symmetrical triangle pattern. It initially is a 50-50 pattern, but you can see that we began to break to the downside. Now using a 1-to-1 of the largest part of the triangle, we can actually bring it here to the apex, which is the last third of the triangle, and you can see that we now have a 1-to-1 measured move target. But we also have in this area here, there was a resistance. Once we broke through, this resistance level is going to flip and then become a support level. So you can see through here, this is actually going to be a really strong support level based on this resistance flipping to support. And look at what it lines up with. We have that 1-to-1 measured move of the symmetrical triangle leading exactly into this support level. And that's where I'm going to be looking to actually take profits on my shorts. Potentially looking for a little push back to the upside as the exponential moving average continues to break down, and then we get that really strong push into the $24,000 per Bitcoin. Before I move over to Ethereum, make sure you've liked the video and subscribe as I'm releasing videos every single day. Now coming over to Ethereum on the daily chart, you can see that we did a very similar move to Bitcoin. We had this initial support area. In this area, we are actually supporting, but again, look, we never actually closed below this area. This green bar right here had a really strong push to the downside, but we weren't able to close below this support level. So you can see right here, this is the major support level. And look, we've never had a bar that's actually closed below it. Since we haven't had a bar that's actually closed below it, we're just having wicks like a little kangaroo tail that comes to the downside and quickly reverses up. You can see that we haven't quite pushed into that bearish momentum yet. But looking at the EMA, we were going sideways, but you can see these last few days, it is beginning to tick to the downside. So potential plays here are moving up to the upside, coming back and retesting this EMA as it continues to travel down, and then we get that push below support level. There is a very significant support level on Ethereum in this level. As you can see, we were failing to break to the upside many times. It was actually 4 failures to the upside. Then we actually had a 5th failure to the upside. But then look what happened. Once the resistance gets broken, we got broken through, we then use this resistance level as a support and then push to the upside. And you can see what's happening right now. Once this resistance level gets flipped, you know that it's going to be a really strong support level. And that's exactly what's happening here. Once we came into this area, came into these strong support levels that were initially resistance levels, we then bounced, had a kangaroo tail all the way back up to the upside, which showed there's definitely a lot of buyers in this area, and we haven't quite moved into the short market that many people are expecting just yet. Looking at Ethereum on this 4-hour level, you can see that we actually made an exact divergence pattern again on the MACD histogram. Here, we had a really strong push to the downside, and that was the push down in price. But look, we actually made a higher low in terms of the MACD indicator, but we made a lower low in price, which is the key divergence pattern. But again, you need to make sure that we had this first push to the upside without this green bar breaking the back of the bulls. Then that's when we know we can then get into the divergence pattern when we move to the downside. And the exact entry was right on this bar right here. As you can see, once the red begins to actually flip to white, it actually means that the momentum is changing, and that's the first bar to enter. As soon as you get the divergence where we have that higher low in pattern but lower low in price, we wait for this first bar to tick to the upside, which was right here. This would have been the first bar. This green bar right in there would have been the first bar that's signaling to us, yes, we need to get long right now because there's a lot of momentum about to come into the market. And look, from this low here, we can actually made over a 2.5% profit, which would have happened in less than 8 hours. We would have made our week's profit in less than 8 hours. And this was a perfect level to sell. As you can see, the EMA traveling to the downside. We then retested this exponential moving average level, and you can see it's now acting as a bit of a resistance level, and it would have been a perfect level to exit my trade for over 2.5% profit. That's all I have for you for today. Make sure you like the video and subscribe, as these videos are coming out every single day.